usually saved for crying children and the insane. "No!" she cried, louder than she'd meant to, as Nurse Schopf tugged her toward the bath. "No!" She schooled her voice into something more pleasant, more ladylike, even though she dug her feet against the tile floor. "Doctor, I'm not at all agitated, but I would very much prefer not to take the ice bath. Please. Isn't there something else? The electrodes, perhaps, or just put the mittens on me and send me to bed." She didn't want to consider the alternatives she'd just suggested. She dreaded the electrodes, abhorred the chafing little prisons locked about her wrists, rendering her hands useless for anything at all. But she feared nothing so much as the ice baths. "Please," she entreated again, frightened tears welling behind her eyes. "You beg so prettily, Lady Benchley." His gaze never touched hers, but drifted lower to her mouth and then to her breasts that tested the seams of her tight and uncomfortable black frock. "But, you see, I am your doctor, and my first obligation is the treatment of your illness. Now, if you please, remove your clothing without further incident, or they will be removed for you." Nurse Schopf's grip tightened on Mina's wrist with bruising strength unusual for a woman. She pulled Mina toward the tub, securing her other hand around Mina's upper arm. "Are you going to fight me today, Countess Firequim, or will you behave for once?" Countess Firequim. It was a name one of the patients had given her that first awful day in Bell Glen. They'd been stripped bare in a room full of 15 or so women, poked, prodded, deloused, and then doused with buckets of cold water. Someone had remarked on the uncommon shade of her red hair, and then on the darker shade of auburn between her legs. Mina had been called many cruel things in her life, most often by her family, the St. Vincents, and generally pertaining to her uncommon height or her wide hips and shoulders, but Countess Firequim was somehow the most humiliating, especially when used by the nurses or the staff at Bell Glen. "I've done nothing wrong." Mina sent one more panicked, entreating stare to Dr. Rosenblatt, who quietly shuffled the papers in her file without even glancing down at them. "Don't put me in there." "You're being hysterical," he said softly, "which only proves to me the extent of your madness." The nurses, one on either side of her now, dragged her by the arms. Once she was close enough, Mina kicked out at the tub with both feet, hoping to upset it. The sturdy tub didn't move, but as Mina was not a small woman, her struggles were enough to free her from the grasp of the nurses. "What's this here?" The cheerful voice of Mr. Leopold Burns could have brightened any room that he entered. But to the patients of Bell Glen Asylum, his arrival always brought darkness. The ogre-sized orderly was closer to his 20s than his 40s, but an unfortunate potato-shaped nose and thinning blonde hair belied his youth. "You're not making any trouble, are you, Lady Benchley?" A fist of dread squeezed Mina's lungs as Nurse Schopf's grip was traded for Mr. Burns's. "Now, let's take those clothes off." Mina fought them this time. She'd tried being prim and obedient. All her life she'd been timid, pliant, and gentle, and had only served to produce the same result. At least this once, she was not a willing participant in her own humiliating tragedy. She struggled and jerked as the nurse's deft fingers undid the buttons of her coarse frock, yanking it down her waist and over her hips and legs. She cried and pleaded, kicked and stomped when they ripped her chemise away. No one in an asylum bothered with a corset, exposing her breasts to Mr. Burns's and Dr. Rosenblatt's greedy eyes. Those eyes drank their fill, and Mina dimly wondered how the nurses, as women, could be a part of this obvious deviancy. The tears streaming down her cheeks were not only caused by humiliation and fear, but by the acrid, unbearable stench of Mr. Burns's breath. He pulled her back against his body and secured her in a bear-like grip under the guise of immobilizing her so the nurses could relieve her of her drawers. His hands groped and grasped painfully at